Hello, my name's Tom Cahill. It's Thursday, the 28th of August, 2014. I'd like to do a little video about an interaction that I had with the police a while ago. Well, technically it's ongoing. Now, what it is, and I found this actually, it's not just in the police, this is in other areas of law enforcement stroke judiciary. There's this plausible deniability is something they really go in for. So, for instance, you'll have a court case and they'll keep changing the judge, and each time they change the judge will pretend he doesn't know anything about what the last judge has said, and so the whole thing is like totally inefficient. It's like having like 3 cashiers to pay for your food at Tesco's, and each time they like pull all the stuff around and take out your trolley and swish it all around again. It's deliberately bent. There is no other reason for it. It's totally inefficient. Well, it is efficient for the speedy, kind of like administration of covering things up. Obviously, then it's very efficient. But if you actually watch it, it's just absolutely, totally and utterly corrupt. Now, I've kind of done a few videos on ALPonz, that's the Aston Lloyd Ponzi scheme, and continuing frauds, which can only go on with the police's full support, full approval, mainly passive support in not doing anything, but also promising to get evidence and then not getting it, promising to gather evidence, then losing it, promising to gather evidence, and then, for instance, like getting all the incidences and all the evidence of the fraud. So all the different people giving them all these documents, spending hours and hours putting it together, proving it, and then they just say, no, we just want their names and addresses. But then they tell the person who's collecting it not to tell anyone. So they go, no, we just got rid of all the other stuff. You see, these people are absolute scum. And the other thing is, like, people send them special delivery and recorded delivery letters and big bundles of documentation 2 and 3 times, and they'll just lie and say they didn't get it. These people are proper scum. Like that, there is no two ways about it. They are scum. This is the City of London Police fraud squad. Now, the first person to actually deal with this was I think it was DC Detective Constable. I think he's a constable. I forget. I don't really know much about police rank. So, like, if he's offended about me getting his police rank wrong, well, that should be the least of his worries. The point is, this guy, gets paid good money, and he goes into work, and basically what he does is, if you complain about a crime, very polite, like a quite charming kind of character, but basically he'll just quite happily spend a couple of hours with you, in my case about 3 hours, and he'll just talk absolute shit to you. And when he sees you're not being convinced by one layer of his nonsense, he'll go on about something else. Now, I'll let you into a little admission here. Right? ALPonz is a massive Ponzi scheme. There's no way anyone would operate that Ponzi scheme 5 minutes away from the head of fraud investigation in England without them knowing that they're totally complicit. There's absolutely no way. And I would say there's definitely Freemason involvement. Or the thing is, it's got so corrupt in England, I don't even think you need to bother to join the Freemasons. I think you can just get in on it anyway if you know the right people. So possibly they aren't, but either way, it's in effect what would traditionally you would have thought at least they'd have the courtesy to join the Freemasons. But the point is, I went in to see this Tony Dobinson, and this is after I had managed to get a crime reference number generated, not an incident number, a crime reference generated, and due to the lies of the fraudsters, I had like 100 million portfolio. That's how much they were saying the collective assets were of the company and worth the company was at the time that I made the complaint. So by the criminal's own admission, it was 100 million. Now, it wasn't that much, but so it's a sizable amount of money. And of course, I didn't know the other victims, so I can only go by what I did myself. So I went in and I spoke to this guy, and one of the things I did on my report, and I'll be very clear about my report. My report had documentary evidence from the criminals and their solicitor, who were also criminals, Coleman CTTS, making it very clear that they'd sold a property that didn't even exist. Now, that is fraud. That is evidence fraud. And they were documents of theirs, and I was explaining, how the whole company is all one, and it wasn't different subsidiaries. And he was saying, oh, it's all complicated. It's not complicated. It's deliberately made by that. All criminals do it. They just split the company up into different parts, and they say, oh, that part's folded, so you've lost your money. Now, this is absolute nonsense, because they've taken the money to spend it on someone else. And even the Madoff case, there's been hearings to do with the Madoff case in England, by the way, and it makes it very clear that any money that went into a Ponzi scheme, there is no firewall. You can't firewall a Ponzi scheme. It's absolute nonsense. But the police, obviously, being absolutely corrupt, pretend that they do, and they try and put you off. Now, one of the things that I put And I was told to put this by a friend of mine. He said, look, what you've got to do with the police is they're completely corrupt. You've got to go and speak to them because you want to get it on the record how corrupt they are right from day one. But you want to say, look, I've given it to the police. This is it. Make sure you get them to stamp every single page as received, because they're lying cunts, man. Even if you page number it, they'll pretend they didn't get some of the ones in the middle. They're total cunts. They're parasite vermin. They're absolute scum. They're the lowest of the low, as a lot of people are now beginning to understand. But the point is, on the first page, or maybe the second page, I wrote, this is a criminal gang operating out of all these different places. And then he said, put a definition. And he goes, he said, this will sound good. He said, and I didn't put where this definition comes from. I said, a gang is a group of 2 or more individuals involved with a series of crimes, which penalty would be for more than 4 years, and which membership might be roving. I just put it in like a little quote. It could have been something I'd read out of a fiction book for all they know, but I didn't. But the rest of it was serious, like 20 odd pages. And as I said, it involved actual documents from the company proving, contradicting themselves, saying things which proved it was a Ponzi scheme. And what this guy did, he zoomed in on that, and we knew he'd zoom in on it. Now, these guys aren't very bright, so you can easily trick them. But I didn't do anything dishonest to trick him. I must make that very clear. But he fell for the bait immediately, and he's highlighted it numerous times. He's going, what's this? What's this? Sometimes a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. Where'd you get that from? I was saying, do I have any obligation to state exactly, the legal definition of anything, and, exactly what the crime is? If I bring what I think's a crime to you, no, that's your job. And he's like, no, that's not. You've got to put it right. And I said, look. I said, don't give me all this nonsense. So you said they've stolen. It's not theft. It's not theft. And I said, it most certainly is theft. And he said, you think you're clever. And I was like, look, flattery will get you nowhere. Just stick to the points. That's evidence of fraud. You go, oh no, it's complicated. Do you think you're clever? Then he said, and he kept saying this, this is Tony Dobinson of the City of London Police Fraud Squad. People much more important than me and you, and he'd always say, Tom, will decide whether this goes anywhere or not. And I said, well, who's that then? And he would always look at you because it's a free Masonic reference, isn't it, right? It clearly is. So what he's basically saying is the Freemasons don't want to investigate it, so we're not going to bother investigating it. Basically, we're a load of corrupt Freemason parasite cunts. That's what he's saying. But you see, a lot of people would be too polite to come to this conclusion. But the point is, several years later, when they realised they'd been had and the police were completely complicit and helping the whole entire process go along, down to defaming me, obviously, because I bought the crime, and they were even doing things like refusing to look into the fraud that I reported and looking into other frauds, but they're saying they're not related, saying that company's separate to that company. Well, hang on a minute, if that's separate to that company, then how can you look into that fraud and not that fraud? Because you're saying they're separate. But you're not going to look at my fraud that I reported. You're going to look at one of the other frauds, which I didn't report, and therefore doesn't have a crime reference number. So there's even a contradiction in that. But anyway, the first cunt to be involved with it at the City of London Police was Tony Dobinson. So if you ever have any calls to deal with him, he's very charming, he's very polite. To be fair to him, he actually phoned me up because I was basically telling him that's bollocks, that's bollocks, that's bollocks. He kept saying ridiculous things. And he actually got back to me and he said, yeah, he actually phoned me about an hour or 25 minutes after leaving because I've just checked. Yeah, actually, he says it's true that they can actually appoint their own liquidators to liquidate them. I said, yeah, well, I told you that, didn't I? I told you that, didn't I? And he's like, oh, yeah, well, I didn't know. So he did put that right. But you see, the whole point is that, so within the parameters of him doing what he's meant to do for the Freemasons, he's a total cunt, right? But when he sort of goes out of that and he actually makes a mistake that the Freemasons wouldn't have told him to say, he does apologise. So you see, this is the thing. You've got to remember these people are institutionally corrupt. If you probably met him in a bar, he'd probably be fine. But when they're in work, they're working for the Freemasons. They're not working for you and I. Right now, continuing on from that, right? When I was speaking to him for about 3 hours, and as I said, I'm quite easy to get along with. So even if I don't disagree with someone, I don't necessarily rub them up the wrong way. I'll just let themselves feel really uncomfortable when they said something stupid. That's my style. And due to my work, I'm a quantity surveyor. I have to do contractual negotiations with people who are going to potentially lose their job over the fact that they kind of not going to get the money out of the firm, or they're going to get, or their firm's going to have to pay out to me, something like that. You know, you quite often in situations, or they're bonus-related pay, and they're not going to get a bonus because they've fucked everything up, and they're not going to get anything. So that's quite common. So I'm used to dealing with these things, and of course, the best way to deal with things is, you know, you don't get angry, you just sort of let them, you know, like just recline more in your chair, the more stupid what they say is, and they feel very uncomfortable, and they feel the need to say things. As salesmen know about this is how you do it. So, the thing is, he came out with various ridiculous things. I said to him, RE10, the administrators are their mates. They even admitted meeting them at social function, right? So they're their mates. There's no question of it. And he said, no, they can't be. And I said, you need to go and speak to them because they're involved with it. Because I said, look, they've put it into an administration. If there's no money in the company, that particular insolvency procedure is totally inappropriate. It should be in a liquidation, but it shouldn't be in a liquidation because it's a crime. So from numerous stages of kind of admission and like, oh, let that go. Well, what about that? Well, then in that case it would be this, and then in that case it would be this. It doesn't make any sense. It's complete bullshit. There's no way it should have been put into an insolvency procedure. And I'll just note now, the official, the registrar at the Rolls building in the High Royal Court of Justice, on the order to wind the firm up, has said Tom Cahill is an equitable interest holder. So the High Court has ruled that I am an equitable interest holder. So all the other shit that came before that has all been very, very cleared, very, very clearly cleared up. When I went to the High Court and I said, hang on a minute, blah, 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 they're like, right, you are an equitable interest holder. So I am an equitable interest holder. And so the police have basically denied this for like 2.5 years or something like that, maybe even 3 years. Tried to intimidate people into saying that they've been ripped off and the fact the police are involved in it. And, you know, so it's all been completely proved to be nonsense anyway. Now, more importantly, I said to him, right, so you need to go down to RE10. And I said, you need to go down to Coleman CTTS because they're selling properties that have got addresses which do not exist on them. Yeah? So I'm paying money for something that doesn't technically exist. Because what they were doing, for instance, it was Tuzla Lake. Tuzla Lake, it wasn't actually in Tuzla Lake, it was next to Tuzla Lake. You've got Mulga and Milas in Turkey. They're two sort of like different, what do you call it, like Kent and Essex, I think, probably something like that. So you've got Bodrum is in Mulga and Ishpanir is in Milas, and they're sort of saying that it's in, how is it sort of like, it got registered at the Milas Land Registry, which means it's in Milas, but they're saying it's in Bodrum and Tuzla Lake, which is actually on the other side of the border. So it's not, it doesn't even technically exist. It sort of jumped from one to the other. It's a bit like me describing as something that's been in Toxteth, in Salford, in Merseyside. You know, it kind of jumped from two different places, so it couldn't possibly exist. And he said, you know, oh, I'm not going to go and talk to them because they work in an office. Right? That's exactly what he said. And I said to him, you need to go and speak to RE10. He said, I can't go down there. If they were a little firm, I could, but they're in an office. Right? So the fraud squad will not investigate things. I wish I'd taped him. I really wish I did. The amount of ridiculous, bent things he came out with, and just imbecilic things he came out with. Then he said, oh, I said, you need to speak to RE10. They're the people who are bringing on the bogus insolvency procedure, and they admitted to meeting them in a social function. And he said, no, because one of them used to work for us. So the fraud squad won't deal with any. And this guy who was talking about, Adam Stevens, who used to work for the Serious Fraud Office. Now, Adam Stevens has now been taken on by a guy called, what's his name? David Alexander, who's the Regent Emeritus, which isn't a free Masonic title at all, I'm sure, of the something Guild of Fraud Examiners UK. Now, he's taken on him and Finbar O'Connell. So that's Adam Stevens and Finbar O'Connell have been taken on by this David Alexander to run more frauds at Smith Williamson. So the whole thing is just outright blatant fraud, and the police are covering up for it. And it's blatant Freemasonry. I mean, it couldn't be more blatant. I mean, I thought it was meant to be kind of a bit secret, but with these, like, it's not very secret at all, because they let dunces in, like Tony Dobinson. That's why. Now, on top of that, so they work in an office. Not going to talk to people who work in an office. They're not going to talk to people who used to work for them. And what was the other thing he kept saying? Yeah, that was it. Fraud's complicated, right? So what the fuck is he doing working in the fraud squad if giving him an address of things, you know, an address of a contract of a place which has been completely built, which technically doesn't exist on the contract, and he won't investigate it? I mean, that's proof of fraud, and you can see all my payments gone out to them, and they're trying to fold the company up, and he's just allowed it to happen. So he's completely corrupt. He's totally bent, and he's not even any good at hiding it. So what on earth is he doing working there? You see, this is the problem. And then he kept getting replaced by other people, and each different subsequent person would pretend they didn't know anything about the last thing, and they'd say, "Oh, I know about that. Oh, I know everything about it." But then as soon as someone said, "What about this thing?" "Oh, I don't know about that." It's complete and utter bentness. It's obvious, past the parcel bentness. They just pretend they don't. They just pick and choose. And what they were doing, the latest I heard, is they decided that they were going to look into one of the sort of potential, because this is the point. In nouveau Ponzi schemes, they actually do build something. They just don't. They just do it in a different jurisdiction, and they don't pass your. They use your funds to build it, but they say, "Oh no, that's because it's going through another company, so it's not yours." It's absolute nonsense. It's definitely yours, right? It is, but they just say it isn't, and they say, "Oh, anyone who thinks they know that, they must think they're clever." It's this kind of nonsense that you get an awful lot of, and so he kept going on about fraud being complicated, and it's like it's not complicated. Then one of the subsequent ones who took over for him, he was saying, I forget his name, but I'll cover him in another video. He was saying, "I'm not going to take evidence off you because it's biased." And I said, "Hang on a minute, this is their evidence." And I said, "Hang on a minute, listen, are you saying that I've falsified evidence? That's their evidence. You can go and check to see where I've got it from. It's emails and stuff that have been sent." He said, "I'm not taking it because it's not just what the quality of the evidence is, it's who it came from." More bollocks. It's absolute bollocks. These people are total cunts, right? Really, I mean, they just need to be fucking taken out and shot, most of them. They're absolutely scum. And the reason I say this is not because they're stealing, it's the fact they undermine the entire fabric of the society. Property ownership is one of the big things that gets people to go to work in the morning, yeah? It's worse than taking the side of another country during a war, or taking the side of another people during a war, because you're undermining the country. They're undermining the country. They're undermining the entire fabric of the country. You've got people who like the royal family, don't like the royal family. The point is, these people, what they're actually doing, they're undermining everybody in the country. Now, I know there might be people who say, well, it's obviously Freemasonry, it's a Masonic plot. Well, obviously it probably is, but it's not going to do them any favours in the long run. So, if you've got, cancer, you cut the cancerous growth out. City of London Police Fraud Squad, and I'll also tell you, the NFIB, National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, that all goes through to them as well. These vermin need to be just fucking cold. They just need to be killed, because all of these people in that squad, they're all completely bent, and they all just go along with complete bentness, and they're stealing from their parents, their grandparents, the generations before. People got a bit of money, they put it away, and these lot there, the Jews and the Freemasons steal it all. These people are absolute traitors. They're scum. They need to be eliminated. That's what needs to happen to them. But in the meantime, we'll just see if we can give them some bad publicity. I'll try and get some photos. If anyone can get any photos of these scum, then I'd be very much appreciative. If you know where they live, I'd like to post all this stuff up, just because they don't like people knowing things like where they live, because of course they're innocent and they've never done anything wrong. Yeah. Now, of course, you've got to remember the fraud squad, because they never investigate any proper crimes. There are no big bad criminals looking for them, so they'll try and use that as an excuse. This isn't the case. And also, if you get caught for fraud in England, you only go to prison for about a year. So once you've gone to prison for about a year in an open prison, I don't really think it's going to pent up aggression and rage. It's not like they're getting raped in the showers or anything. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I've been Tom Cahill. It's Thursday, the 28th of August, 2014. I'd very much like to hear what you have to say on this subject, because it's very serious, and any information you've got about it, I want it compiled, because if we can get these scum nailed for fucking up numerous court cases and investigations, which I'm absolutely sure we can, because that's all they do all day long. I know this is the case. We'll start to get somewhere. We need to start cataloguing it. We need to start getting it out so people can understand these people are scum. They are scum, and people need to be calling them what they are, which is scum. They're just like paedophiles and fucking they're just disgusting vermin, people traffickers and stuff. These people are lower than them, because I mean, most of them, I don't even think they're taking backhanders.